comments or not?
I have no knowledge of any comments that have been sent to us.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to remarks from the Johnson County Library Board of Directors. Does anybody have anything they want to share? No?
I'm good.
Okay. I really don't have anything to share, not chair. So we'll move on to the Friends of the Library. Who's going to read that one?
We don't have anyone from the Friends. What we're doing on this route is just having them submit their written report, sharing the information on their bookmark design contest, some of their internet sales. I can share with the board that they have gone back to doing online sales, and those are going well. They've also applied for and received a PPP loan from the federal government for operations, and have received the money, and then are working with them to make sure that they get loan forgiveness. They're working on their reopening plan, and again, they're looking for ways to kind of increase membership, but are working at a reduced rate. They're also going and moving ahead with their automation process, which is how to get more of their material online. So they're looking at the devices and software to make that happen. So a lot of good work is going forward, and then they're just beginning to make the adjustments and move towards more internet sales. And that concludes the Friends report.
How are they going to do the bookmark design presentation? Is it still unknown at this point?
I think where we're at is they've actually declared the winners in the report, and those were acknowledged online. We aren't able to do the photo ops that we do with the board just because of the situation that we're in.
I didn't know if they were planning on doing that in the future at some point.
If we can, I think we really want to get back, and hopefully next year we can have a different, we can do it back. We'll be back and doing it in person again, and not doing it virtually or digitally how we did it this year. Over.
Okay. All right, next we have the Johnson County Library Foundation report. Is Stephanie on or not?
I don't know if Stephanie is on this call. What I can...
No, I am here, but Sean, if you want to go ahead and just do the summary like you did Friends, that is fine by me.
Okay, that's not a problem. Again, which the foundation did their donor appreciation using Zoom, the same platform we did for the 1952 Society, and the writers writing the next chapter, and then the Writers Circle. We had, I think, close to, how many people was it, Stephanie? Close to 50?
Yeah, we had about 50 emails and about maybe 70 people online. It was very well attended. Yeah,
it was really great. Skylar Jones, if you know of Indiana Jones, he is an archaeologist, and he kind of shared his experiences working in northern Afghanistan. He also kind of shared his experience just coming from really rural Kansas and being quite isolated to when he was maybe 19 or 20, working in Saving Passage so he could go across to Europe. He arrived in Paris, ended up getting a job as a photographer on the newspaper, and then got to do joined an expedition after that, traveling across the Sahara back in, must have been the 1950s. which was quite an adventure. I think he signed up with a British group of doing this. He later on in life continued to cross the Sahara Desert a number of times. What's kind of interesting is when he was in Paris, he learned French, and then as he traveled in northern Afghanistan, he learned various other dialects. I think he learned Pashtun, I think, and Ben, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, because each valley at that time in Afghanistan had its own language. And Ben has shared that, if you talk to Afghanis about the country of Afghanistan, they are not going to know what that is. It's very remote and very isolated. And he just kind of shared his life and kind of the adventures that he'd had, also about how he went to Edinburgh and got his degree, because when he left, he wasn't degreed, and then how he then moved on. I can't remember whether it was Cambridge or Oxford, when he came back doing his PhD work, and then ended up being a position became available at the university, and I think he taught there for 30 years. And so it was a wonderful event. The other piece is that the library lets loose. We've talked with the foundation, and we just said we can't accommodate. We couldn't see a way to plan for that event in the fall with everything going on, and said that the library couldn't offer that space. And they understood that that was probably an unreasonable expectation to have 400 people in the library in September. With all the information. So the event is going virtual, and they're in the process of planning that. And then again, they looked at finalizing their 990 returns, and have been monitoring their investments as we see the stock market go up and down and ping pong. They're just kind of looking at those monies and how they're going forward with that. The other thing I forgot to talk to you about with the Friends was the Friends, we'd given permission for them to use Lackman for the summer sizzling book sale, which is a big event. But again, with talking with the Friends and with COVID, we mutually agreed that they would not be able to do the summer sizzling book sale this year, and that we're just going to have to push that off for another year, and this would be the year focusing on online internet sales. Do you have any questions for Stephanie or myself from the foundation?
I don't think so.
Did I get everything, Stephanie?
Am I mic'd?
Yep.
It's Fabian Shepherd. Hey, Steph, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm living it like the rest of us. Hey, have we seen an uptick in online sales because of the virus situation?
We have not. I'm going to say we haven't seen an uptick, but usually we don't have an appeal going right now. It will be very interesting to see how it goes as we start to have the appeal for Library Lets Loose. We're getting our sponsorship materials together. They're going to go out next week. And we're not quite sure what that's going to look like, but we've had a lot of positive support verbally in terms of, fundraise. We want to give. Funders in the community are saying, we're not pulling back, we're giving. So we're very encouraged in terms of applying for grants and asking people to contribute if they want to, because that's really our mission, is connect a donor with their passion. And during these times, it makes people feel good to know that they're giving in a way that is meaningful to them. So it's maybe not quite what you're after, but I think we'll see the proof will be in when we start to really ask in these new times. So we'll keep you posted.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
That concludes the foundation report.
Okay, next up is Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Amy. Well, I think the big news today, if you all haven't heard it yet, is that at the Board of County Commission meeting this morning, Dr. Lemaster said that he felt satisfied that Johnson County can go ahead and join the phases with the state of Kansas. So in other words, unless the governor changes it, but I don't believe she's going to, but that would mean we would move along in the phases starting Monday. In fact, I did just see a story on the Kansas City Star that was 27 minutes ago that the governor plans to move the state into phase 1.5 of her reopening plan next week, allowing barbershops and hair salons to open by appointment, but keeping bars and theaters closed. So whatever she ends up doing, that's what Johnson County will do. So I think a lot of people were waiting to find out if Johnson County was going to wait another week, but Dr. Lemaster said he felt we could move ahead. So that's important news. And I was going to ask Joe. Joe Waters, I see, is on this call. Is there anything else that perhaps I'm not thinking of or that I'm not aware of, Joe, that you think would be important for the library board to know?
I think that is certainly the most important thing that happened this morning, and the rest of the business is not directly connected to the libraries.
Thank you. And then, of course, I always like to say what I'm reading right now. And I am currently reading a book by Martin Luther King Jr. called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And I think I'm reading it because I think it's so relevant to where we are now, because where do we go from here? And what are the opportunities and challenges that are ahead of us out of this COVID situation? So that is what I am reading, and that's really all I have to report. Thank you, Amy.
Anybody have any questions for Commissioner?
I just have one comment with that because it had come out in the Lawrence Journal about Governor Kelly, and I think she is continuing. Phase 2 would allow groups of 30 and less to congregate. And with this 1.5, she's extending it to just continue just to be 10 or less as far as groups. And so that's probably the one change, as long as Johnson County is syncing up, that she is beginning to pump the brakes a little on, or to be a little more incremental on this. Would that, Commissioner and Joe, would that be a fair, an accurate comment? Over.
I would say so, Sean. I think part of what we're seeing in Kansas is, believe it or not, there are, I don't remember if it's 4 or 5 other counties that actually have more positive cases than Johnson County, particularly out in Ford and Finney County where the meat packing plants are. So it could be that the governor is taking a look at the whole state and wanting to make sure that we don't go too quickly, and especially that some of those industries have time to do what they need to do to slow that continuation of those positive cases. But I don't know, Joe, did you have any other observation on that?
This is Joe Waters. I should have said something earlier. The only thing that I would add, Sean, you are, as happens so often, a couple of steps ahead of me. I have not caught that language from the governor's notice or her announcement today. But the Commissioner Hanslick is correct that the Public Health Department and Dr. Lemaster specifically connected up the approval or his support for following the governor's steps at step 2, or step 1.5, I suppose, at this point. And but there was also additional information that caused him to be encouraged by that, and that is the ongoing indications that the virus is on the decline in our community, and by all of the measures that we have being very well managed. So that's his reasons for that optimism going forward.
I think also it's important to note that he said, even though this is we're moving ahead, he very strongly encouraged people to continue to be vigilant, continue to keep themselves safe, encouraging the use of masks, the social distancing, and if you have any concerns about your health, to limit going out and limit your exposure. So it doesn't mean we're flinging wide the doors and nothing to worry about, but it means we're taking another step forward carefully. And you're right, Joe. The Kansas City Star article I'm looking at, and Sean is right too. It says that under this phase 1.5. Fitness centers and health clubs may reopen, but without classes or locker rooms being open. Casinos, theaters, and nightclubs will stay closed, and mass gatherings of more than 10 people will remain prohibited. So you're absolutely right, at least according to the Star. Thank you. If there are any other questions, please let me know.
Well, and maybe we'll get to this later on, but can you remind me where the library stands in terms of the phases? Are we phase 2?
I can talk about this. We're
Yeah,
phase,
Sean will talk.
yeah, we're phase 1. And the first phase is really got to do with opening our drop boxes, quarantining the 300,000 items that we have out, and then processing those. And then on the 26th at Monticello, Lenexa, and Blue Valley, we'll be doing a holds pickup for physical material. And that's right in phase 1. And in my report, I'll go into a little more detail about that.
Any more questions for Commissioner? I always appreciate your report. It's always nice to be informed, and I like to hear what you've been reading also. I know for our business at the funeral home, it's been a unique way of dealing with the 10-person limit, but we're sticking to it. And unfortunately, sometimes families, have a little trouble with it, but all in all, they're understanding. So it's going well. Next up, we have Fred Logan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think on the issue of reopening, Sean has already done some introduction on that, and you're going to hear his report later. What I was going to point out was that in many respects, the governor's orders don't really address a library system like the Johnson County Library system, just in terms of sheer numbers, in terms of handling of thousands of materials on a daily basis, and the sheer number of patrons who come in the doors. You know, in any time in our 14 libraries, you might have 200 patrons coming in there. So it's a real challenge, and Sean's and the staff are developing and implementing a plan for a phased reopening. But I think I'll just leave it at that for now. That's I just wanted to point out that these other orders, like Governor Kelly's, provide useful guidance, but in a practical way for the Johnson County Library, given the sheer numbers who come in, it doesn't have that much bearing on the reopening. With that said, let me move on to the Kansas Open Meetings Act, because this is important. You know, we are always very careful in how we deal with that. And these meetings that are being conducted remotely like this are very much being handled in accordance with the Kansas Open Meetings Act. Appropriate notice, appropriate opportunity for the public to either watch or to listen in by telephone. It's not really feasible to have the citizen comment section that you would in a live meeting, but they are able to participate. And the Kansas Attorney General put out pretty extensive guidance last month about Kansas Open Meetings Act in this very unique environment. And I just want to assure the board that these meetings such as this are very much being conducted in accordance with the Kansas Open Meetings Act. And there is an opportunity for the public to listen, either to watch on Zoom or to listen in by telephone. So I think I'll leave it with that. And of course, they are invited to submit written reports as well that would be included in the board packets. So I think with that, I'll leave it at that, my report at that, and see if there are any questions. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, moving on, we have the county librarian report.
Thanks. And so Dave's going to start, but one of the things that, just to add on to Fred, the reason why we moved from GoToMeeting to Zoom, it's a little different platform, is because it's much easier for us to Facebook live stream. So this meeting is being streamed live out for citizens to connect. And so if they may not have the Zoom link, this is another way for us to be transparent and share with the community about how we're dealing with the issues around COVID and then just general the health and well-being of the library. So Dave, could I hand it over to you to give the financial report?
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so I think I want to direct you to actually page 9. That's probably the most telling kind of how we are, or at least how we were as it were at the end of March of 2020. As you can see, revenues to date at the end of March, we'd received a little over 21.3 million of the 40.4 million that we had have budgeted to receive for 2020, which is approximately 53%, which is on par with where we would typically be at this point in time, and was on par with what we did at this point in time for 2019. Our expenses, all funds, and including the collections encumbrance, shows us at just a little under 9.8 million, which would be about 24% of 40.4 million. So we're on par with where we would be at this point, a quarter of the way through the year, and revenues exceed expenses at this point by 11.5 million. So so things were looking really good through the first quarter. I don't know if there's any questions any of you have with regards to any of this.
The 11 million is the reserve though, right?
No, that's so that line right under total expenditures there, that represents the difference between the 21.3 million and the almost 8 million that we've spent. There is reserves. It is interesting that you say that our total reserve is about a little under, well, it's at 11,129,590, and that's the numbers below there. It shows operating reserves at about 9.5 million, and our reserves and our special use of just
Are
under
we seeing an overage because we're not paying people because we have people furloughed?
No, so we receive a lot of our revenue on the front end and then spend it out over the course of the year. So a lot of our revenues that we collect from property taxes, for example, which is our largest source of income, comes in chunks. One large chunk kind of at the beginning, and then I think there's another chunk we should be receiving here soon. So that's we always get our revenues kind of up front and then spend them over the course of the year. So.
And where are we seeing the ad valorem that's delinquent?
Okay, so ad valorem that's delinquent would be somebody who's behind on their property tax payments, and would be them making payments from a past period of time to try to get current. I think if you look up there, we must have had a rebate or something that we gave, so that's why those numbers.
That's why we're in negatives.
Yeah, right. So, and that's one of those areas where we are anticipating that to not if people were having a hard time paying taxes before, given the current kind of situation that we may be faced with economically here now, that may be a hard place to have those people trying to get current, I guess, if that makes sense.
Anything giving you heartburn?
Through the first quarter, no. I don't know. Sean, do you want me to talk about unemployment?
So one of the pieces that we're trying to get a handle on that we thought might be useful for the board to also get a handle on is, what does the future look like for our revenue stream? And we can tell that by looking at the economic fragility of Johnson County, but predominantly looking at unemployment rates. And so Dave's going to talk a little about that next. And though we may be good now, the question is, are we going to be good this time next year? And then I have a final follow-up question on, maybe for the commissioner, if she can give us any insight to the commission, is if the temperature is to keep the taxes the same, or if there is any discussion around any form of tax relief, and where would the library be in that equation, would help us with the planning also. So Dave, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I wish I were here to give better news, I guess, but I feel like it's important for us to kind of take a little bit of a temperature check. The unemployment numbers that are available by the Department of the Bureau of Labor Statistics isn't current. It's always a look back. As the unemployment numbers, they're done by a survey, and they're based on location. So at the end of March of 2020, which is the numbers that's most current, Johnson County was in great shape from an employment perspective. Unemployment rate, I think, was right at around 2.7%, which was the lowest in the Kansas City metro area and probably one of the lowest in the entire nation. The Kansas City metro area was very good too. Its unemployment rate was around 3.9%, and the U.S. Rate at that time was 4.5%. Had a nice phone conversation with Doug Davidson. He's the president of our CERI, which stands for County Economic Research Institute. I don't know if you're all familiar with that organization or not, but he deals with a lot of our local economic information, and based on unemployment filings that him and I have been kind of looking at and watching here, in the states of Missouri and Kansas, he's guessing that we're probably looking at the end of April, when those numbers come available here in a few weeks, that our unemployment rate will probably be in Johnson County somewhere between 8 and 10%, which is probably still maybe better than the metro area, but it's just to put that into perspective. The highest point during the Great Recession came in July of 2009. Johnson County's unemployment was about 7.5% at that point. So we're anticipating for April those numbers to be higher than they were at any point during the Great Recession. Things have just really spiked up. As you probably are well aware, there were another almost 3 million filings in the U.S., new unemployment filings in the U.S. just this past week, bringing that 8-week total to around 36 million. which that number represents about 15.7% of the total civilian workforce in the United States. And where Kansas, I think Kansas had about 243,000 filings in that 8-week period, which would represent around 16% of the civilian labor force in the state of Kansas. The civilian labor force is about 1.5 million.
Do those numbers include people who are furloughed that when things open back up, they will have a job waiting for them?
So it would. If you were furloughed, you would have filed for unemployment. So yes, those would include those as well.
And so it's possible that by the time we get our May numbers and things are open back up, we're going to see a drop?
Possibly. I mean, yes, I would say that. So in those numbers, I think there's a question of if it's temporary or more longer term in terms of those filings. I mean, what those numbers represent is just new filings. Duration is probably dependent upon employer and the status of those. The one thing that I think worries me a little bit, and I was going to get to it, is there was a report that was put out by the Center of Economic Development and Business Research. They're associated with the Wichita State University, and they had done a look at the Kansas City metro area and was looking kind of just at jobs and the job sectors. And they did a 2020 revised prediction saying that they think that there could be 130,000 job losses this year. Which in put that in context, that's about a little over 12% of total jobs available in the Kansas City metro area. So my fear is that there are going to be some places that are shedding jobs and there won't be work to return back to. And I don't know, it's a forecast, so things could change. I'm hoping what I'm bringing turns out to be wrong, and in a good way wrong, but I just feel like we need to be aware that it's a real situation, or at least could be a real situation, given the rather large number of people on unemployment. And I don't know. I think the sectors that are going to hit hardest here are restaurants and the hospitality industry, hotels, and then retail, in-person retail.
So
any questions?
How is it
I'm sorry.
affect our budget cycle as we head through this summer? Are we going to be back to the drawing board to lower what we're looking at for 21, or are we still in a wait and see?
We're in a pretty good situation because most of our ad valorem was done in escrow for people's mortgage payments. And so 2020 is going to be just fine. We think 2021, there are a couple of things that we don't have that we're continuing to look at. The amount of bankruptcy, either personal and business bankruptcy. The other piece is we don't have a good understanding on the economic fragility, which is we have some national numbers, which is, when I talk about this, is how much savings do people have, meaning if they lose their job, how long can they go before they run into problems? I think there's some kind of staggering numbers. 40 to 50% of Americans have only 2 weeks of savings. But that may not be true for our community, and we just don't know. So we talked about it last month that though we're a wealthy community, we may also have carry large debt loads. That's harder for us to find out, but we're trying to just, each month we'll give you updates on where we're at. I think we're fine for 2020. I think, but I think if Joe can talk about this and Commissioner can talk about this, which is there is going to be, the county as a whole is going to experience an economic impact from this. And that means probably a reduction in revenue. And so we've done planning with the county both on a 10% and a 25% reduction on our budget. but we don't have enough information to know if that, how that's going to affect the library. And also the commission can, if it chooses, lower the mill levy rate. And I don't know if the Commissioner Hanslick wants to talk about, has any insight or thoughts on that?
Sure. Sean, I'd be glad to talk a little bit about the 2021 budget. As you said, the property tax receipts have been very much on target and continue to be. So that's good news for the library, because the library's main source of income are those ad valorem taxes. What has been most concerning to the county is the sales tax, and we've been watching that very, very carefully. See how that's going to end up. But at this point, the county has a very solid plan for 2020, and we are not too worried about the ability to get through this year and stay within our budget. The 2021, we were just dealing with this item today. We have set the schedule for the 2021 budget process. We're going to be having a initial, what we call a retreat meeting on, I believe it's the May 26th. And then in July, we will be having pretty much twice a week meetings to hear from various departments about the budget going ahead. So, and of course, the library will be one of the presenters during those budget hearings. As far as a feeling on the board of lowering the mill levy, that I could not say. I think it's too early to know what that will look like, because I think the other side of it is that we actually have some increased needs for services as a result of COVID, when we're looking at human services and mental health services. And so there's going to have to be a lot of discussion about how we prioritize the various county services, and which services need to be kept the same, which ones need to be strengthened, and maybe which ones can be cut back a bit, or maybe the service level cut back. Those are all discussions that are going to be coming up primarily in, excuse me, in July. But I think, as I said, the library, because of a different mix of revenue, has a little bit different concerns than perhaps the county as a whole. The other thing I would say, and I appreciated what Dave Ratney was saying, because I'm in the process of trying to do the same thing to figure out what is the actual economic impact in Johnson County, and in what areas. For example, are people who are homeowners, how many of those people have lost their jobs? Because that could impact what we're looking at in terms of property taxes, or people having to move or leave their homes. There's just a lot of unknowns at this point, but in the next 2 months, we should have more information. So is that helpful, Sean? Was that kind of what you're looking for?
Yep, that was perfect, and just that really kind of helps us frame this, and as you're looking at it and we're looking at it, we'll share information. But I wanted to just say to the board, and particularly as the board subcommittee for budget planning, these are going to be things that we look at for the 2021 budget, and when we talk about those types of things, these are the areas of risk, and we want to assure the board that we're planning for if there is a downturn, that we have healthy reserves and that we will be able to weather that, and that we're in a very good financial position going forward. So, any?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions or comments. One is, I guess on that is, the other unknown is how well did all the stimulus impact as far, I mean, did those unemployment, is that adequate? Is the PPP, the payroll protection program, how well is that, helping small businesses? And I think at this point in time, it's the great unknown, to the extent that it did a good job, then, and everybody gets rehired after 2 or 3 months, the ones that are furloughed, then, it may not be a huge deal, but obviously there will be some sort of impact, but we'll see. And I know there's more money coming, and we'll see if the states and cities and counties get money. So I think you just can't ignore that part. $2 trillion that has already gone out is a number. The question I have is on the.
Say, David, that Johnson County, we did already get our allotment for the CARES because we are an entitlement county. Johnson Sedgwick received direct funding from the federal government, and Johnson County got about $116 million. However, that all has to be used this year. We can't carry it over to next year, and it has to be used for COVID-related expenses.
Okay.
So we can't use it to backfill losses directly. So, but you're absolutely right. There's so many unknowns, and unfortunately, we have to have our 2021 budget done and submitted to the state by the end of near the end of August. So we're going to be putting together a budget without having the advantage of waiting a few months to see how things shake out. So you're right. We will do our very best, but it's not going to be easy.
I guess my question to Dave is, how much in terms of salaries and benefits are we saving? Do we know that yet from all the furloughs? I know we're not done with the furloughs yet, but should have some idea. Yep. I assume we can almost write off maybe a lot of the library generated copying, printing. That's not too much. A lot of the overdue fees, which is $700,000, and a few things like that we can probably definitely write off.
Yeah, I think that's true. In a kind of a look that we had, and we did some projections, just guesstimating how long folks might be on furlough, and we have some vacant positions that we aren't likely to backfill anytime soon. We thought that it will more than make up for the losses from a revenue standpoint that we think we're faced with for 2020. So I think we're good for 2020. 2021 may be a little bit more of a concern. Obviously, about 86% of the library's revenue sources is property taxes. So that's always a look back because 2021's numbers are based on what happened in 2019, and I think it was a pretty good year. The 2022 budget will be based on whatever's happening now. So I think our bigger threat revenue standpoint could be in 2022. Just really, it's early to say because we're only in May here, and maybe things rebound, and I'm hoping for a V recovery, to this, but if it's more of a U, we will take the steps necessary to do what we have to batten it down and get to smoother waters.
Yeah. Now I'm hearing a swoosh like the next.
So just the final piece on the PPP, because the Friends have gone ahead and done that. You must it is a loan, and you must comply with that loan. If you don't do everything, then you actually you don't get the loan forgiveness element of it, and then you will have to pay back that money at a very, very low interest, but it's not under the PPE. It's not actually a grant, or it just allows you a low interest loan from the federal government, backed by the taxpayers. Before we move on to the statistics report from Adam and Lacey, are there any more questions for the commissioner or concerning the financial report? Okay. So let's move forward, and Adam and Lacey, would you be able to give us the digital services usage statistics update?
Yes.
Thanks.
Adam Wathen, Associate Director for System-Wide Services, and I'm joined today by Lacey Griffin, who is our Collection Development Manager, and she's going to be talking about our digital usage and to give you some insight into what's happening in eBooks and our digital usage world. You can see in the core operational statistics here that we are showing March data. So this doesn't include April and May, but this is the beginning of when we closed. You can see that digital usage continues to trend up, and that our physical circulation and our visitation really went down. And so when we closed our doors, our physical circulation basically stopped, and our visitation certainly stopped. And so I had to expand the axis on these to actually show the dip, because our data doesn't dip that low. And but you can see that it has dipped fairly low in both of those months. And then in April, you'll see those bottom out, because there was very, very little physical circulation, no visitation. Any questions on that before I turn it over to Lacey? Okay, Lacey.
All right, thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. My name is Lacey Griffin, and I'm the Collection Development Manager. Last month, you actually heard from our e-resource librarian, Hope Harms, on different digital offerings that JCL owns in its virtual branch. And today I wanted to look at the digital collection usage over the last 4 months. As you can imagine, we've had a dramatic increase in usage since March 15th, when our buildings closed to the public. So even though our physical buildings are closed, our virtual branch has been very busy. Before we get to the data, I wanted to introduce you to the whole team. Hope Harms, who you met last month, is our e-resource selector. Other collection development selectors include Matt Fagan, Beth Atwater, Elena Mitvicker. Our department senior clerk is Rachel Fair. Together, this team selects all the physical and digital materials our patrons check out and consume on a daily basis. This team has transitioned easily to the new work from home environment, and Elena McFicker actually has been working with data and research for the Emergency Operations Center at County. She just ended her reassignment this week and came back to us on Monday. You may ask, what is our digital collection? Hope did a great job doing an overview last month, and I wanted to show you the easiest way to get to our offerings. The digital collection can be accessed on our website, jocolibrary.org. You can click on eLibrary or Research in the blue bar at the top of the page. I circled both of those links in yellow on the slide. They sit right next to each other in the options. Each eLibrary or Research, once you click on it, a drop-down of topics will show. This allows patrons to decide the type of digital material they are looking for, and then they can jump straight to it. We also have offerings in our regular catalog, so if you're looking for the next bestseller, you would be able to search for it in our catalog, and all the formats, including digital, would be listed. This graph shows our total digital collection usage for January, February, and March of the last 3 years. As you can see, 2018 and 19 show some increase from year to year. Our digital usage grows every year due to increased patron knowledge of products, new devices that are on the market, and new offerings that we purchased for the library. In December of 2019, we launched additional streaming video platforms, Acorn TV and Canopy, with great success. As you can see on the graph, our digital usage for 18 and 19 was usually around 75,000 to 80,000 interactions. We were increasing, but we never quite hit that 80,000, 85,000 mark. That was until March of this year. In March of 2020, we had a spike and the usage stopped just shy of 95,000 digital interactions. On the next couple slides, I've pulled out some different examples of digital offerings that have attributed to that spike. Back in December, I presented to the library board about the new streaming video content for JCL that we were going to start offering in 2020. Acorn TV and Canopy have had great success over the last 4 months. In this week-by-week graph, you can see that when we launched the product, we had a good increase. It was doing pretty well. And then we had a dramatic increase on week 11, which would be right around that March 15th date. We went from averaging 500 checkouts a week of different TV shows and movies to 1,500 checkouts a week in March. And then April's weekly average increased to just shy of 2,500 checkouts a week. Since closing the physical buildings, that streaming video weekly checkout is 5 times higher than it was before the closure.
Was the jump between week 14 and 15, is that when our last board meeting was? When there was a push with everybody putting different stuff out, because I think that's when Commissioner Hanslick shared it, and then a bunch of us. And did we make a bump?
I think that is a Bethany Hanslick and all the other board members who did things bump right there.
Yeah, you've heard about the Colbert bump. Well, it's Hanslick, Griffin, Ruo, the JCL board bump. That's what we'll call it.
We'll take credit for it.
I have to say, that was one of my most popular posts. I posted that that graphic that Hope had put together, and people just went bananas. They said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea I could watch Canopy and Acorn," and I was just thrilled how excited people were.
I'm wondering to see how many people are going to come out of quarantine with British accents because they've watched so much Acorn TV.
We can just say to the if this commissioner gig doesn't work out for you, Commissioner Hanslick, a social influencer clearly is what is a second career. Over. I'll go back to Lacey now. Over.
I also was going to mention, and one of the things I was thrilled about is that the library made the Foundation Center accessible remotely, because usually you have to go you have to go to the physical library to use it. And if you're not familiar with it, it is a national database of grant and funding opportunities that's widely used by nonprofit organizations. And so I've been telling my nonprofit friends and contacts, hey, you can get on your computer at home and use the Foundation Center, and that's a real rarity. So I don't know how long that will be able to continue, but even things like that that are somewhat specialized have gotten more attention because of the COVID situation. So great job. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Another one of our areas that's had huge growth is eBooks. This graph actually shows 2 different things. The top part shows, the yellow line shows the usage of eBooks and eAudiobooks in 2019, and it's a pretty steady line there. The red line shows the usage in 2020. You can see the dramatic jump in week 11 and the continued growth into April. The bottom of the graph actually shows that while eAudio checkout, which is the green bar, has kind of grown just slightly, it's the eBook checkout, which is the blue bar, that has nearly doubled since we've closed. So for April, patrons are checking out almost 12,000 ebooks a week. Throughout the stay-at-home order, the collection development team and the database advisory team. The database advisory team is a group of staff members from all parts of the library system, and it's led by Hope Harms. They have been hard at work adding additional digital content to our collection. Here are some of the products that they've been working on.
And very
I thought you'd be happy.
National Theater on there. Yay.
Yes, yes. Yes. The Udemy from Gale and the National Theater Collection are both, we're in the works of getting them so they can set up the links on the website, and hope they'll be up very, very soon. Udemy is presented in partnership with Gale, and it provides 4,000 on-demand video courses taught by world-class business instructors. You can learn different things in business, technology, design, and personal interests. And then the National Theater Collection will allow you to stream high definition recordings of selected stage performances by the UK's National Theatre. Plus, it will have bonus archive material from behind the scenes looks at the productions. And then something that actually just started, this has been added, is we recently added the Chilton Library. And so the Chilton Library offers patrons a chance to save money and to build some skills with step-by-step instruction on repair, maintenance, and service information for popular cars, trucks, vans, SUVs, all of those that are on the road today.
Can we add Overdrive to the list soon?
So we are starting, this year we'll be working on our ebook evaluation. And so we will be looking at our ebook products and our eAudio products. And we'll be also looking at the market. It's been, I think the last time may have been 2012, 2013, the last time we took a full overview and evaluation of ebook and eAudio products. So the database advisory team and Hope are going to start that evaluation this year, and they'll have some findings probably by the end of 2020 on which direction we want to go with that.
All the ebooks. I vote all.
Well, that concludes my update. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I got one question. Has there been any tech issues that we've found with the increased use?
So there's been increased use, and then as Commissioner Hanslick said too, there's different databases that have actually opened up remote access that we've been working on. So Hope and the IT folks have worked diligently to be able to make sure that anybody that increased access, we were able to accommodate that and figure out how to get that within our own login. And then yes, there have been some hiccups, but not so much on traffic on our side. Most of that would be maybe vendor traffic or people who weren't, like companies that weren't exactly large or used to this kind of like large digital environment. And the team has done a really good job keeping that up. We've had a couple hiccups, but nothing's lasted very long. And honestly, our IT people are amazing, and their response to those type of things is really great.
Good.
Do you have any other questions for Lacey or for Adam as we go forward? I just want to say thanks to Lacey and her team. I mean, when we're talking about 12,000 books and doubling it, again, it's a resilience factor with the organization. Going digital is really important, and it's going to be probably strategically more important as we go forward this year and into the next. At this time, I'd like to ask Scott to come up and give us an update on our the Comprehensive Library Master Plan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Syme, Project Coordinator for the library. Today, on behalf of our CSSC Projects core team, I'd like to give you an update on this project. So a little bit about design. Our design process is iterative. With each round of design, we get closer to the final layout. We're currently in the schematic designs phase, and we're anticipating to wrap that phase this month. Our goal at the end of that is to end up with a rough schematic design where all the room sizes and adjacencies are pretty much set. Lately, we've been having check-ins with several groups, including the architect, our admin team, our managers, and then also managers getting updates and thoughts and comments from their staff about what they're seeing. That's been happening over the last few months. And the purpose of that is to make sure the designs are reflecting the needs of those groups appropriately, and also keeping in mind the goal of future flexibility. So a couple of next steps. We anticipate bringing the design update to the library board in June. That update will be presented by Rick Wise from the Clark Anderson Partners. And let's see. After schematic design, the project will enter into the design development phase, which is intended to capture more details and specifics, finalize the floor plan, and start to specify materials, window and door locations, and other general details. We're also planning to begin looking at how to free up the building for construction to begin. This will mean temporarily moving some of our staff out if they're back at Central by then. We're learning to work from home, which will really help us out in finding locations for our staff to work from. We're also anticipating using other library buildings as temporary locations for some staff. The goal is to free up as much of the building as we can to have our construction occur with fewer phases, ultimately shortening construction duration and saving money.
Are we going to use Lackman for any of that?
So yeah, right now we're looking at potentially using Lackman and Antioch as temporary locations for some of those staff. Okay, last slide for CSSC is related to the timeline. And we're that red arrow, and we're right in the middle of design. Any questions about CSSC from the board? Okay, I'll go ahead and move on to a quick update about Lenexa. Okay, so at Lenexa, I wanted to give you a quick update on progress that I believe Sean mentioned last month for the Lenexa library. So I've got a couple of updates for you. The work that's happening over at Lenexa currently is in the holds area inside the building. So the holds area is being improved to create better access to hold shelving during both normal and holds lobby hours. For all of our new construction, we have a process in place to identify areas that can be improved within the first year of construction, and this is one of those. This work started in late March and has been continuing with no impact to patrons as the buildings have been closed. The hold shelving will ultimately be lower to improve visibility. Flooring under the hold shelving has been modified to be flat. And Michaela, if you want to go ahead and advance, I think there are a couple of pictures. The self-check will be repositioned and a handrail is being installed. This work's being coordinated by Juan Lopez Tamez, one of our facilities partners. Go ahead, Michaela. Installation of the handrail and carpet was progressing today. Juan is actually on site over there right now. And then the hold shelving will be installed after that. And we're estimating completion date on this in just a couple of weeks. So in the event that we can start to reopen buildings, this area will be ready to go. Any questions on Lenexa?
I have a question on Lenexa. That's my library and where my kids like to go. There used to be large animals and animal prints in the bathrooms. What happened to them? Last time we went, they disappeared. My daughters were sad.
Let me follow up on that one. I know that those, just because of the nature of how they're on the floor, they wear out. It looks like I'm getting a
They're
notice in
on
the
the
chat
walls
from,
too. They weren't just on the floor.
oh, on the walls too.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it would terrify me as an adult to go into a stall and have a large animal like that. But the children seem to be fascinated with it.
So it looks like from Juan, it looks like those are back, and they were changing the material to, I think, make them more durable.
Wonderful. I'll share that with my children, and Juan will be a hero.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Any other questions on Lenexa or CSSC?
Thanks,
guys.
Scott. Really great report. And I just wanted to tell the board, or assure the board that even though we're going and experiencing this, the CSSC project has moved forward without, we're not off schedule. We're hitting our milestones, and that's going forward. And the same with the holds lobby. Progress is being made on that, and we're not falling behind schedule, and we're not falling behind on budget. So those are all, that work has continued as if we were open. I'm going to introduce you to Tomiko House. Tomiko House is our new HR partner and has been working with us since Dave Davis left. And she's just going to give a very kind of brief overview of how she's worked with us on the furloughing, maybe a little about how that experience has been for staff and about how we're bringing people back just on the county level and then the library. So Tomiko, I'm going to hand it over to you. If your technology is allowing it.
Sorry, I was muted. Apologies.
That's right. That's right.
My name is Tomiko House. I am one of the HR partners in the Human Resource Department. I provide HR support for Johnson County Library, and so thank you for allowing me to be able to speak with you guys today in regards to COVID. This whole situation has been very fluid since it started in March, and I just want to provide, like Sean said, some context on how HR worked with the library to be able to move forward with assisting staff as we were going through the furlough process. So a little background was that, as you guys may know, on March the 7th, Human Resource was made aware of the first confirmed positive case as far as the virus. And on the 13th of March, Commissioner Eilert moved forward with declaring a state of emergency and then creating basically orders or getting orders to approve for us to be able to move forward to try to provide staff with income stability when we had to quarantine or isolate them due to travel or them being symptomatic. Also, when some of our departments or agencies had to suspend or reduce services. And so when we received the information that Governor Kelly had decided to close the schools for the remainder of the school year, and Dr. LeMaster had issued a public health emergency order that would last through April the 1st, Human Resources wanted to be really transparent with the county and our employees. So we move forward with being able to provide guidance regarding COVID issues that were taking place through our intranet and extranet. Human Resources also established a helpline that was manned by HR professionals Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and then also on the weekends to be able to have staff email any questions or concerns that they had related to COVID. We also asked for our departments and agencies to look at their workplaces to see how we could go about still offering essential services to the public or our community, with also maintaining the physical or social distancing. We did ask for our agencies and departments to look at ways to be able to see if work can be done on site or remotely. We also established the quarantine and isolation guidelines. We moved forward with suspending business travel through April the 30th, and then also suspending the training through the end of April, because most of our training here in the county had 10 or more people. And so then we later received information regarding around March the 18th that President Trump had signed the first family corona Virus Response Act, which was going to go into effect on April the 1st. And so with some of the executive orders that were approved by the county manager, we thought that we really had a good plan on moving forward to be able to help staff maintain income stability. And so then around maybe March 27th, we received information that identified employees that were impacted by suspended services or services that were curtailed, that those individuals wouldn't be eligible for the emergency paid sick leave or the expanded FMLA. And so after we received that information, we had moved forward then with having discussions on about furloughing our staff, because we knew that we weren't going to be able to provide them with those extra benefits. And so when we decided, we had a committee that was put together to go through what services that they can no longer provide to the public. Then we went through basically criteria to decide which positions and which individuals need to be furloughed at that time. And so once those individuals were identified, we then moved forward with having or scheduling web video meetings with the impacted staff. And so on those video calls, there will always be a HR representative. It would be the employee supervisors, and then also members from the JCL or Johnson County Library administrative team to be able to ask questions. We would go over how we got here, next steps regarding Kansas unemployment, how it was going to affect their county benefits, once again, the support that we were providing them through the helpline, offering them FAQs when it came to furloughed staff, and then the unemployment information. And then along the way, we would provide guidance, because with the unemployment agency, as Dave mentioned earlier, they have received an overwhelming response. And so staff have been very frustrated with not receiving information, not being able to talk to a live person. And so we've been trying to be there to help along the way where we could. Also, with that being said, that now since the stay-at-home orders have been lifted, there was a committee that was put together with JCL, and I think that they're going to talk about that later, on basically reopening and offering services back to the public. And so since then, we have started basically unfurloughing staff for them to come back to be able to assist with those services. As we all know, this has been a fluid process over the past 2 months, and I just really want to say that I appreciated all the support and guidance that JCL employees and even the administrative team have provided. I think that with their assistance and help, things went as smooth as they could be. So I just really want to say thank you. And so, are there any questions for me?
Thank you very much, Tamiko. I know that it's a challenging time, and for the HR department, you're tasked with a lot. So we members of Johnson County are grateful for everything that you're doing over there.
Thank you.
I want to say that too. So what you don't know is that every video conferencing that we were working on with staff that were being furloughed, Tamika was part of that discussion. She helped admin and the managers come up with talking points, and she was able there to answer questions and put a human touch on something that was a very difficult process for our staff. What you don't know about Tamiko is that she also, there's a hiring freeze, and so that happened right when she was being transferred, and so she continues to do her old job, and then she's taken over this and the furloughing process, and so she's done a tremendous amount of work. She's always been there for us, and she's helping guide us as we go forward for bringing people back. And of course, there's lots of anxiety about coming back into the workforce with this. She's helping us navigate that and helping us create a schedule where we're talking with staff in case there is any feeling or resentment or anger for being furloughed, and particularly the Kansas State like almost every other state in the nation, was overwhelmed by the number of claims that were being done. What I do have to say about Governor Kelly and the state of Kansas is they moved very quickly to put resources there. Yes, it was frustrating for some staff people, but they were able to kind of put resources to make sure that people were able to get their benefits. The other thing that you may hear about coming from HR or from that's been a criticism is that we weren't able to give accurate information, and that's maybe a simplistic way of looking at it. Tomiko and the administration team have always given the most accurate information. The problem that we've had right at the start of the first 4 weeks is that the information changes and it was a moving target. So what we've been found we're doing is providing you with the information that we know about today, and when those things change, then we provide an update. And that can be very frustrating because people are like, well, you told me this yesterday, and then now you're telling me this today, and we're like, yeah, we saw that today, 20 minutes before this meeting started, the governor comes out, the reopening, it's 1, 2, 3, all of a sudden we get 1.5, and the rules change about what you can and can't do. What we're just telling people is you're gonna have to be cool about this and realize that everyone is trying to get you the information you need. It's just that the information is changing. And I think I just speak for Tomiko and for the managers and for those furloughing. My observation was everyone, their questions and frustrations, everyone extended a tremendous amount of grace, and everyone who was involved with the process knew that people were trying to do the best. It was just a very difficult situation. So on behalf of JCL, I can speak for the board. Tomiko, also I want to say thank you for being a partner with us, and thank you for helping us navigate through it. We couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you.
You're released to go for the rest of your you can say you don't have to hang around unless you want to, but I want to say thank you for doing that report. It was really helpful. I'm going to move on to Jen now to give just an update of the buildings, because these are your buildings and you need to know that during this process we are making sure that they are in good repair.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Munkin. I'm the Associate Director for Branch Services. It's good to see you all in this medium. Today, we just wanted to give you an update kind of how things are going since our buildings have been closed, and wanted to let you know how our partnership has been going with facilities. So you might remember in November of last year, you approved an MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, for us to partner with facilities to manage our custodial services as well as our building maintenance. Since that time, we have diligently been meeting to ensure that that partnership has been going smoothly. So we check in almost every month to check to see how communication is going. Do we need to change the way we communicate? Are we getting the information that we need? Are our partners getting the information that they need as we manage our facilities? And as we have been closed, that's been even more interesting to try to manage all of that. We have also been looking at our service level agreement and our MOU so that it can be that much stronger and better when we bring it for renewal at the end of the year. So we're creating a very detailed list of responsibilities. Oh, I'm sorry? Did someone have a question?
No, I think you got Brandy's just a little bit of feedback.
Oh, sorry. So we're working on just updating our MOU and creating a very specific level of responsibilities that facilities is responsible for and JCL is responsible for. So that will be an addendum in next year's MOU that we bring to you for approval. I wanted to make sure you understood or met, virtually met, Brad Morgan, who was our new building engineer. He was hired right before all of the craziness hit. And so he was just able to attend new employee orientation this week with Sean and Tricia. He is the one who is replacing Mike Heffernan, and his responsibilities are a little bit different than what Mike's were, but he is responsible essentially for making sure that our buildings continue to run smoothly, and that he works with Juan and Abby to ensure that the capital replacement projects get implemented, but also just the day-to-day operations. His group is responsible for monitoring our HVAC controls, the lighting controls, all of the things that just make our buildings run. And so he has been busy while we have been closed, and the list of things that he's been doing is there on the screen. So he's been making sure that our fire panels have been up to date, backflow inspections, making repairs there, assessing our HVAC conditions, working with the it's the development group, performance development group. I think that's what PDC stands for, which is Juan and Abby, to make sure everything's going smoothly there, and that all that work is coordinated. ACS is our building security company, so they're the ones who manage our security cameras and key cards for us, and so he's been working with that as well. And then also Archibus is the system we use to submit help tickets when something's wrong. So he's been working to make sure all of those requests get taken care of as well. He's been doing a great job. He's been super responsive to all of our needs, and we're really excited to have him on board. The other area we wanted to update you on is our custodial services. Chai Her, who's also a new hire, is our new custodial supervisor, and he's been doing a fantastic job. We're super excited to have him as well. He has been busy doing some special cleaning projects since we haven't been open to the public. So getting some of those projects done that are a little bit more difficult since we're open 7 days a week to get accomplished. So some deep cleaning of the buildings, carpet cleaning, hardwood floor cleaning, making sure all the surfaces have been dusted, disinfecting of surfaces, and getting us ready for reopening. He has done a phenomenal job in creating cleaning protocols as we do get ready to go into our first phase of service, so that staff are trained on how to properly clean up after themselves, and just to make sure that we have all the supplies that we need as we get ready to move forward in those phases. And that's really it. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Are there any restrooms that need to be repaired, carpets, repair, paint that we should be doing while no one's in the building?
Right. So that's a little bit tricky. So because of the budget shortfall for the county, while the library is in a pretty good spot, other departments have had to make some more drastic cuts, and facilities is one of those. And so they have asked that we not do some of those, what shall we say, incidental projects. We're making sure that everything's running smoothly, but projects like painting or recarpeting or things like that, unless they're vitally necessary, they've asked us to hold off on, as they've focused their services on the more critical needs in the county right now. So that's one thing. But we, like I said, we have been able to get a lot of, the Lenexa Holds is a project we were able to fast track and get that accomplished while we were closed. Deep cleaning, all the buildings have been deep cleaned since we've closed, and carpet cleaning and things like that that are harder to accomplish have all been done.
Sean, is a situation like that something that when we do another MOU, we can renegotiate that part of the contract? That I'm not exactly excited about the fact that we could have been using this time to our advantage, and because somebody else was not agile as we are, we basically left a bunch of stuff undone. That's not really impressive in terms of how a partnership really should work.
Yeah, and I think, so let me just talk a little about this, which is, and there are a couple of things that are going on from facilities that you may not be aware of. So the courthouse is completely funded through property sales tax, but that's going forward. But that's been a huge lift for the facilities department. Also, the library is considered a non-essential service, and so facilities managing essential services and then coming up with new cleaning protocols for those essential services, such as county jails and both the juvenile correction and all those types of issues really had to go first, and the library had to go on the back burner. That being said, the thing that Jennifer didn't talk about is the Spring Hill roofing project, and that's moving forward. But also the recognition that Abby, Juan, and Georgia have continued to work on the central staff space consolidation. And we hadn't planned budgetarily or even run through the budget committee some of these initiatives that we could have taken advantage of being down. That doesn't mean that we won't take advantage of it, because we're going to be talking a little about this with reopening. But from my standpoint, just operationally, unless they did a huge lift and hired more people, I don't think we could have asked more. We just are in the unenviable status of not being considered an essential service. Parks have found them same way. Sorry, Bethany.
What we're talking about is that if we're going to have an MOU with facilities, they don't get to decide that we're essential or not. That if we are contracting out this relationship, then we're essential because we're partners, not because they get to choose that they don't want to do the project or not. That's what I have a problem with, is that if we have a partnership to streamline this stuff, we don't ever have to wait in line, or we can do it ourselves.
And
That's
I think
what I want to see addressed.
Yeah,
Bethany, I think you beat both David and I to the punch. We both agree with you, it seems, because I was a little perplexed as Jennifer was telling that to us, that I was thinking, wait a minute, we're essential to us. And if we weren't contracting with you, we could have had someone else do it.
How many people got furloughed who could have been painting and laying carpet and doing stuff instead of?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think these are all great points, and we can take a look at the MOU. I think that's part of why we have them year to year. We can take a look at that and talk with Georgia and Danny and maybe even Brad about what we were able to do, what we weren't able to do, and then maybe talk about that more specifically about changing language. Well, I think these are really great points. David, did you have anything you wanted to add with this also?
No, I'm just seconding what Bethany's saying. It's too bad we, instead of having to close something down, I wish we were farther along on the central library, and the Roland Park, obviously we closed it down and now we're closing it down. It's, but that being said, it'd been nice to either just contract out, if there's areas that we'd be doing in 6 months or a year from now where we'd be closing parts of it down. Be nice just to get it down now, something that we're going to be spending money on anyway. Obviously, don't just do things just to do things, but something that is on the verge of needing repairs. This would be the time if we could.
Yeah, and I'd like to see that we have something in place that, the forecasters in the crystal ball are saying we're going to be looking at this kind of stuff happening again in the fall. I want to see that we have a better plan in place, that to some extent we got caught unawares, that we didn't know what we didn't know, but now we do. And so if we can be more agile, that if in the future we have to do this again, let's make sure that we can utilize this so that we're not idle.
I agree wholeheartedly, Bethany. I think we should be able to control the strings a little bit better than that. We shouldn't be at the mercy of facilities determining what happens in regard to this.
Yeah, and I don't. I mean, I'm not sure if that's a fair characterization. The CRP and CIP are still going forward on schedule, and facilities. The rural renewal initiative and the roof on Spring Hill are still going ahead. We jumped on the fact to get the holds lobby and accelerated there, and we're really 8 to 10 weeks into this. Facilities has worked with us to help us acquire cleaning material as far as PPE and come up with, before Mike and Dean, with really defined cleaning protocols for the building within this period, and then have done a deep clean on 14 locations. I feel that if we were to go through the MOU in detail and look what they had agreed to and what would contracted them to, and then their ability, it is my opinion that they have fulfilled all those obligations, and I believe that Chai, in many ways, has exceeded those in his diligence. So we've made, since this, a move into recycling, which we hadn't done as an organization, with the help of Abby, and maybe when I'm going to give you a snapshot of what's going on, that you will see that facilities has been a really good partner with us through this. That being said, I'm in agreement with you that if we're going to go through another round, or we're going to talk about risk, that it's really important. So
I want to clarify, Sean. I'm not saying that anybody has done anything wrong. I'm saying I don't like a system, a framework that limits our ability to be agile. I'm not saying, I mean, I know that all of these people have been working, they're getting their stuff done. So this is not in any way saying somebody has been asleep at the wheel, they've been shirking their duties. I'm saying I have a problem with a framework that gives anybody else the option, the opinion, a vote on us taking care of our buildings and us utilizing our staff that we pay for to take care of our buildings in the way we want that done.
Yeah, it's a really...
Nobody's have a problem with anybody getting their job done. It's the framework.
You know, there was something that Bethany said that, though, I really do agree with. I agree with the whole thing, Bethany. So, but there was one aspect I really do. We're furloughing our people, and, you know, they're struggling, and, you know, some of them are getting paid or not. It would be nice if we could reimagine, reinvent, figure out a way to put some of those people back to work, whether that was to help clean, whether it was to help paint. What is it that our facilities need that some of those people could have been helping us with? I'm giving examples that may be way out there, but I guess what I'm saying is, if we had the opportunity to take some of those people and get some of the things that we need done for the libraries, and figure out a way to continue keeping them on a payroll and making progress, I think that's a win-win. So I'm very supportive of what Fabian and Bethany and David said. Is I just like the idea of things still need to get done, and being able to have our people be able to do that. That's where I come in.
And I agree. Yeah, there's a difference between saying, you know, we're prioritizing the holds, or we're prioritizing the cleaning, but it's, you know, oh yeah, we're going to furlough some people and we don't have it because of budget stuff. I think that's the difference that I have.
Sean, this is Commissioner Hanslick. I would just say, I think the situation is probably a little more complicated than it might appear, because a lot of decisions had to be made at the county level that did impact libraries and parks. And I'm not prepared to speak to all the details at this point, but I think there are some larger considerations that perhaps impacted this situation. And I don't know if Joe Waters is prepared to speak to that or not, but certainly that's something we could speak to at another meeting. but I think it's a little more complicated than maybe it appears.
Maybe this will help too. So we have already started scheduling and putting teams for what would be COVID 2.0. This has happened in the fall. The goal here is that we wouldn't furlough staff, that we would have a work plan for them that may encompass this, and that staff would be fully employed. The challenge for us, and Tomiko talked a little about this, was from the shutting down to the furloughing didn't allow the organization to create plans for the 212. And I think for parks, it was closer to 600 people that they had full and seasonal workers that they ended up furloughing. Because we have this and we know that we've gone through this, the goal of the team is like, let's create work plans for our pages and clerks. So if we are at stay-at-home orders, that we can have them do meaningful work. But from the county standpoint to us, and not a defense, really said, we want you to go through and look at these criteria, and they provide us with the criteria. We put a team together and identified those people that met that criteria, and then those were the ones that we were furloughed. And again, by state statute, we are required by law to follow HR instructions. That doesn't mean that on the second phase, if they're doing this, that we actually have a plan and can talk back to HR and our HR partner and go, here's the plan, and we're not planning on furloughing because this is the work they're going to be doing. That's the lesson learned from this, and I agree with you, but what I will say that we are planning to bring a plan to you to outline this so we don't have a repeat of it. Does that? So you will see that in a board report going forward.
That's great, Sean. Thank you for explaining that too. While I'm not as concerned with some of the things that both David and Bethany mentioned, the one thing I am more concerned with is our ability to have control over these things. And really, I do understand you're somewhat advocating for the facilities department. You don't have to do that. We all have a great deal of respect for our facilities department. We know they do an impeccable job, and we're grateful for the work that they do. I do take issue as a board member with something, though, Commissioner Hanslick, all due respect, when we're all adults here and we're intelligent adults, if it's complicated, I think we can sort it out if we have all of the data points and the details. I think that these are things that are open for discussion and that we need to have all of the information. I don't think it's too complicated for us to absorb that. And frankly, I don't care what Parks is doing. I'm only concerned with what the Johnson County Library is doing and the complete information that's being presented to this board.
I appreciate that, Fabian. I think the point I was trying to make is that the facilities is also under taking their direction from the county, and there may be other issues that impacted what happens with the library that they had to consider when they're making their decisions. So, and I don't know what those might be, but I do know that there have been coordinated responses from the county level. So that's what I was referring to.
So might I make a suggestion? The suggestion is when we go and review these MOUs, often that they'll have a scorecard with them. And maybe, and Fred could weigh into this, we might form a subcommittee of the library board that goes and does a scorecard on these, HR and facilities, and work with the admin team. It would be maybe just a very short, but we could create maybe a matrix to kind of look at those things. But then also, you guys are in control, and if you don't like something, we can absolutely change it, or we can renegotiate that. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that you shouldn't be dictated to by a county department on what gets done when. And I hear that loud and clear, and that will be something that I communicate with. I think a scorecard approach may be something that the board might want to take, and I think we need to put on the books a time for us to review those two MOUs as we prep up for December, which is generally the time that we go ahead and renew them.
Yeah, I think, I don't, obviously don't have the MOU in front of me, but, to the extent that we want to utilize that services, is there a credit back to us for things that we're paying for that we're not getting in those kind of situations? Is that in the MOU? Does that even apply here because we're using them in holds and things like that?
Well, it's a difficult thing to calculate. So the money that we're putting through in the MOU says that these resources, and if you think of county staff as resources, the facilities are committed to the library and service. So the work that Juan and Abby and Georgia do for us. And then with the facilities MOU, we don't get to that granular level on the of the payback system. What we do is go, these types of things, broad areas need to be accomplished and done. What we can do is through a rubric, take a deeper dive onto that and go, okay, cleanliness of buildings, or things that didn't, timeliness, or communication, all those types of things can be looked at, and they can be looked at a location level, or they can be looked at a communication level, which is response time. All those things can be measured. But ultimately, we have things that we need to get done, things that the board want to get done, and you need to have assurances that those are going to be delivered, particularly when you're paying for them. And so we can put some structures around that. Just as a general position, I think we're in a much stronger position today than we were 5 years ago as far as management of these facilities, just in furniture, carpet, roofing. Archibus, which is partnering with facilities, has positioned us to be really good to know what's going to break when. And I don't think, back when I first arrived here, that the technology was really in place. We were doing these huge lifts every decade where a company would come in and do an inventory, and now we're doing this in real time. That saves us money, but again, it's I think oversight on this, and having oversight with the board is something that I'm going to put down on a to-do list for this year, and we'll go back and revisit it. Does that's okay?
Fair
Yes.
enough, John. That's good.
Okay. Let me just write. I'm just writing a note down. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm just going to very quickly cover the Evergy easement that you granted them to run down the west side of the central library. That's been completed, and all the trees, to my knowledge, have survived that. That was a successful rerunning of a electrical cable and conduit for expansion. Michaela, if you would be able to pull up the risk management document that's sent. So one of the big questions is like, well, when are you going to open up the library so people can move in, right? And we've been like scratching our heads about how would we know that the risk level is appropriate to open the library and allow 38,000 people come through. It's almost like it's a slow motion way of filling up Royal Stadium, that it just happens over a week, and all those surfaces and all the complication. So what we found is that Johns Hopkins School for Public Health has come out with a model that admin has adopted and what we're using as the staff. And it really, if you could scroll up a little to the 4 stages. Just I think make it a little bigger for me. Perfect. So really, what we need to do in order to open our buildings for the public is really broken down into 4 steps, which is conduct the risk assessment, determine what our risk score is, and find our corresponding risk scores in the decision tree, and the decision trees below. Then we move on to stage 2, which is modification. Modification is the things that you do to your entire operation. And this is what they've done is really, this is an advisory for all businesses on how they do it. So if we're talking about sneeze guards, or we're talking about separation of tables, if we're talking about the amount of time, how many chairs are at those tables, all of those types of things are modifications. Then you go and rescore it as far as modification. And then you put the modification score into your decision tree. Then stage 3 is use the decision tree to find your overall score, using the decision tree to receive a determination. And then what you look at mitigation, and mitigation is things that you do at the personnel level, which may be recommending that all staff people wear masks, or what we're providing is thermometers and oximeters for staff. We can't mandate that for staff, but we have purchased 2 of those for every location. So people can come in if they choose and take their temperature with a thermal infrared thermometer, and they can put an oximeter on their finger. Those are the 2 leading indicators. And there's some interesting research the country of Liechtenstein is doing to provide those actual wearable devices looking at these kind of key determinators. Liechtenstein is a country of only 35,000, so it's a much easier proposition. But the way they're using to manage it. And Michaela, if you could scroll down to the next page. So this is, that looks great. So this is really where we're at, which is the risk assessment, which is the risk score is low, which would be ideal. It's moderate, or it's high. So we've independently, Jan, Adam, I believe David, and I think Ben may have also filled out the risk matrix, and then we compared our scores today. Here's the bad news. The bad news for the library to open up using this matrix is high. We would categorize it as high to very high, meaning there's going to have to be significant modifications and mitigations to get us to lower that risk. It's complicated to think about how to manage behavior, and one of the things that we're looking at to bring for the board in the next month is patron code of behavior. But it's also really hard to drive this down because the general public as a whole do not follow guidelines. You may be asking, like, well, how are other places opening it up? Well, we're really different in the sense of just the volume, and restaurants, for instance, can open up, but they're not as central as, 90,000 square feet. They don't have 400 employees, and they just don't have the volume. They just don't also have people staying for the duration that they do. And so many of the same challenges that we're facing, I think Wayne is also facing with schools, which is lots of people confined in a limited space for a prolonged period of time. This goes into a lot of detail, but what I wanted to show you is how we're making a determination, or what is the framework that we're making when we're making risks. So if you look at the very low risk, which is you're able to go ahead and really lower the risk of people contracting COVID-19. It doesn't mean that it's 0, but it means that it's very, very low. For us, it's high to very high. And so as a board, do you have any questions about this type of risk assessment, or how the framework that we're going through to determine what's the actual risk of opening a public library to the public and to the staff?
I will start. Partly my concern here is I know that this is a kind of a fuzzy ground between what's operational and under your purview and what is actually about the running of the library system. in a broad strokes, which is hours. And so this is not my love language at
Understand.
all. In fact, I'm going to be real honest here. This makes me incredibly hostile. This is a bunch of, I don't know, bureaucratic trying to cast a view. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know. Nobody has good information. There's no good data, because there are all kinds of things that we're seeing that don't gel with what the numbers, what the predictions. And I'm betting 38,000 people have gone through Walmart in Johnson County, and Lowe's and Home Depot and Target and Hen House, and there are some weirdos there too. And so I don't know how safe we can ever make any of this, how we can do this in a way other than, it is not necessarily our job to mitigate risk for everyone. I think we need to be sensible, but I don't think we need to be afraid of being open. I want us to be reasonable. I don't think that we want people who are slimy and germ-ridden to be spreading. And so we need to have some practical considerations about cleanliness, about patron codes. But I don't know how helpful this is, other than maybe to cursorily help you organize your thoughts with how we want to open.
Yeah, these are all good points. And what we've got to do is make a determination, and I know this may not be your love language, which is what are the facts that we know about the infection rate in Johnson County? What do we know about the virus? And then what do we know about people's behavior, which is, and so with the rubric, they're like, how much time does your staff interact with customers? Okay, for what period of time? How long do your customers stay? How much inventory handling do they do? And so where you may be at a grocery store for maybe 20 minutes or an hour, and you may come in and use your library and just be there for 30 seconds when you pick up a hold. So these are all kind of considerations. The kind of question is, how do you then justify opening without understanding the risk that you're asking staff or patrons to go in? And it's a methodology or a framework to look at that.
I'm not asking patrons to do anything. People, individual citizens, can choose to use the library or not. My only real concern is for our staff, because we're telling them when to go to work. We're not asking them to. And so my concern is only really about, what do we do to keep the staff feel safe, feel comfortable? People want to wear masks. They want to bathe in sanitizer. Then we should get as much of that as we possibly can. And so my concern is there. If we want to limit people by number, by distance, how many people can camp in, I'm not ready to have people camp out in the library all day yet. But I do want my books from my holes. Yep. And so do 500,000 other patrons.
So we have a really good plan on how to get people the material. We don't necessarily have a really good plan on how to give them computing services and meeting room space and have that camping out type of experience. We're working towards it. So there are a couple of things that you as a board should just be made aware of. So if we bring staff back and we haven't got a strong, maybe bureaucratic framework under place or a process in place to assure this safety, we open, in my opinion, a liability for OSHA and OSHA complaints. Just as if we don't put signage or markings on like glass, where we've had with the barriers going through and people run into it, we create an unsafe place and form, there's a liability risk for not going through and having a plan. Part of that reduces the liability for the library, both from OSHA complaints and from public complaints, is that we have a framework or methodology that we're doing the modification and mitigation, and that we have executed that to the best of our ability. And I think what we're saying is this framework is defensible for us as an organization, and acts as, in some ways, a protection of this organization, but also a justification for why we opened, when we opened, and what we did to protect both our community, the people coming in, and the staff. There are some disturbing trends that we're seeing across libraries, which is furloughed staff or other staff that are being asked to come back into the workplace. Talking with other library directors, there are some staff that are choosing not to, and that of course is their choice. But we're just going to have to thread the needle on this. If there was another great tool out there to look at risk and risk management, I would certainly use it. We're not, and you'll see this a little bit on how we're streamlining this process so we can make decisions. And again, the whole goal is to get material in people's hands and to do it in a way that we're not transmitting the virus from the material, and we're not subjecting our staff to hazards beyond what would be normal and reasonable. Again, the problem is that we don't know a lot about this. We're learning new things about COVID-19 every day. And they're not good. There's not any good news. There's no one said, hey, it's got less infection and it's not infecting kids. I mean, everything we're learning about it is telling us that many of the symptoms are much worse. So any other questions or comments on this? We're going to be streamlining this and coming back with a plan to you. And I also will, on the next piece, I'm going to give you a snapshot of where we were and where we are today.
Yeah, I agree, Sean. I think you're doing things as best you can. The problem is you don't know that percentage down the bottom right-hand corner, which is, is there, what is the true percentage of risk of somebody walking by each other of this, or how long does it really last on a book that it, I know they say it can last a couple of days, but is it really infectious after a couple of days? Is it in an hour? Is it one day? Yeah, just the numbers are, I don't think anybody knows the numbers are. So tip my hat to doing your best you can.
Yeah, that's kind of the approach we're taking, which is let's try and follow as much of the science on this as we can. Let's come up with a plan, and then let's implement that with all those pieces. Michaela, could you bring up the snapshot of the COVID? Okay. So we talked a little. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. Please stop me if you have any questions. Just interrupt. We talked about the central staff is going forward. Let me just tell you that we closed on the 13th. The reopening team was actually started on the first week of closure. That's how much work has been done on that. The whole lobby is moving forward. We've looked at budget and reported with the county, both on kind of a bad scenario and a worse scenario looking forward on cuts, and those will be something that we're sharing this year as we go through the budget committee work, what we did, and we can make changes on that. We furloughed the staff, roughly 58%. We've come up with a virtual programming strategy to offer many of the programs that we did online. And then circulation funds have been reallocated, which is when I'm talking about circulation, I'm talking about the collection funds have been reallocated to be more of a digital collection. We've purchased digital devices for all JCL employees. That was a kind of an error, it was an area that we needed to fill. And we've partnered with the school districts for the summer reading program. We've put that entire program virtually now, but we're handing out books, working with them with their free and reduced lunch handout program during the summertime. The Answers program has been moved online as long with the telephone service where you call in. And so rather than needing people to be at locations to answer the phone, they can be at home. So using Cisco's remote telephone services and Jabber, we're able to do that. The reopening team has developed a 4-phase approach. So on the 18th, we'll be receiving materials. On the 26th, we'll be taking those holds. And then we're moving on to phase 2, which is, sure.
On the holds, the 26th is when it goes live in the computer, or when you can actually start picking them up?
So the 18th is the day that I believe you can start placing holds, and the 26th is the day that you can start picking them up.
So then that's this coming Monday, you can start doing that. And then your 3 choices are Lenexa, Central, and was it Blue Valley?
It's actually Lenexa, Monticello, and Blue Valley.
Okay, Lenexa, Monticello, okay.
Because those are the ones, yeah, just drive-throughs. Okay. Then the next thing that the team is working on is what we call holds lobbies, and we're looking at locations where we can put up bookshelves in the lobby and put a self-check machine, and then people can kind of come in whenever they want. And so you saw there's been some numbers on occupancy rates, and so it's X number of people per 100 square feet. And so that's another thing. And then the third thing that we're looking at is some form of maybe curbside pickup. What we've put with the team is we've said that we would love to have our goal is to have all locations up and running as far as distributing material from those locations by, I think it's July 15th. And that's gonna take a big lift to make that happen. We're bringing back the furloughing staff. And again, we may not get all that staff back, and we're in the cycle then of interviewing and hiring staff that don't want to return with new staff. We're researching expanding Wi-Fi into neighborhoods and have a team working on that. We are working with the Library Foundation to create a permanent digital platform. So all this content we're creating will have a place to reside. So we're kind of setting ourselves up for COVID 2.0, but we're also kind of looking at the opportunity where story times can be done at 6 p.m. and you can have that experience in your house. We talked a little about we're also providing staff the equipment and training to do virtual story times. We kind of threw them out there with their laptops and their phones and said, hey, make programming. And they have, but we're looking at cameras and lighting and training so people can create a better online experience and take it to the next level. They've done a great job, but it's been with chewing gum and twine. Library Lets Loose is going digital. Friends have canceled the summer book sale. Volunteers have been suspended. Volunteers, just by their age, the average age, are probably one of the most susceptible groups. We're installing staff protection at the service desks, and we've worked and procured PPE for staff. And so hand sanitizers, gloves, and then our makers are making 400 masks, and we're also making an additional 200 masks for the Arts and Heritage Center, who's asked us for their help. We're continuing to work on COVID signage, which is just, stand here, do this, wash hands, all those types of things that are kind of, you have an option to wear a mask, those types of things. We're looking at the patron COVID behavior, which is a policy that we'll bring before the board. We're continuing to monitor the economic health. We're planning for phase 2 for COVID in the event there's another stay-at-home order, and the primary goal is not to be furloughing staff again. And is that the conclusion of it? Yep. Any questions about those? So that's what's happened in the last 10 weeks.
Sean, you've mentioned that you cannot make it mandatory that people use the oximeter or the temperatures when they come in. I know some places do, I know hospitals do, but just wondering, I was curious, why is it that you can't make that mandatory?
That's a decision made by HR when we ask them, can we do this for staff, and can we do it? And we ask legal counsel for, can we do it for the public? Can we mandate this for the staff? It's really it's easy. HR says that we cannot do this and it's not required, and so we're unable to do it. We can provide the equipment and make it optional. And then when talking with Fred, it's really about access and First Amendment rights. So if you're a business, you can say, hey, you can't come into our restaurant unless I zap you with the thermometer and you do the whatever kind of testing. You can do that as a business, but as a library and access issues and First Amendment issues, if someone refuses to do that, we stand on very shaky ground for refusing them access into the building. And if we make it mandatory to wear a mask, we also are limiting access unless we provide those masks, or the patron comes with their own mask. And if you want the legal, I'm not a lawyer, but I can defer to Fred to talk a little about why we can't, to answer why we can't make patrons wear masks or do a thermometer. Fred, do you want to talk about that?
Well, the biggest problem that I see right now is that that kind of testing isn't available. I mean, we can't start establishing rules that we wouldn't be able to implement in any event. And a library is a little bit different animal in government. I mean, there's First Amendment issues there. People have a right to access to materials. Now they have to follow the rules. If you set up social distancing rules in the library and people don't follow those rules, they can be escorted out and their privileges can be suspended. But we can't start implementing things like requiring tests and so on when they're not generally available. I mean, hospitals and doctors have had a hard time getting that stuff. So we have to be very careful on what we say we're going to mandate that patrons must do. Now, having said that, I do think it's very appropriate to establish amendments, revisions to the Patron Code of Behavior that will deal with issues like social distancing. And I don't have any doubt that we'll have some patrons who get their library privileges suspended because they don't follow those directions. I think that's entirely appropriate. But I think when we start placing other kinds of demands on people to go out and spend money, I think there could be some legal difficulties with that.
Okay.
It's really uncharted territory. And again, we really look to stay, the whole goal of the organization is to follow the federal guidelines, the state guidelines, and then the county guidelines as far as health. And so there's lots and lots of information out there. What we are following is the science behind this, so the CDC and their guidelines, and then federal, state, and local health official guidelines on how to keep safe and what practices. And that means, for staff, that means hand washing, particularly staff that's handling material, and that requires hand washing at a certain interval. Again, we've been advised by our health professionals not to provide, that gloves are actually more dangerous for our staff and how to use that, and that masks not only only protect you from me if I'm wearing the mask, and in some ways have a downside. So again, what we're saying is, what we're following them is saying social distancing is the best way, and frequent hand washing. So again, you're hearing that, but then you're hearing lots of other types of things. We're really narrow on this, like these are the frameworks that we're using. Yes, there are lots of other things, but this is the science. These are the guidelines we're given. These are the ones that we're following. Those, and to be honest, folks, those change. Like, the White House is telling reporters to wear masks. One day they're not wearing masks. It's it's really hard for staff to get a handle on that, but we're trying to be really, really consistent or really, really clear on the facts as we see them. Any questions before I move on to the next item? So this is, I want to make sure I'm not cutting anyone off. Okay, so the next piece is just to get your feel for this proposal. We have talked about suspending fines from really and expanding the window from February 1st to June 30th. There's some technical difficulties just as people bring material back, and we just want to say during this time, we've asked you to hold the books. You're going to be held without any damage to you financially. Just bring the books back and we're good to go by the 30th. This
Will
is
that include damage or just you've had your book for a while?
Just if you've had your book for a while. If you've gone ahead and destroyed the book or left it out in the rain or you've lost it, you're still going to be on the hook for that.
So it's,
right?
we're really just talking about that an amnesty about time, not about damage or stealing
Yeah.
our.
Yeah, we've closed the return boxes until we could get a handle on that, and you shouldn't have to pay that because you couldn't return your books. Also, depending on where people are at, we're just making the window a little bigger. And the other piece is technically, if we were to do it on the May 11th or whenever we open the 18th, it gets difficult. So we thought it just gets difficult to manage. So we said, let's make the window a little bigger. And we'll believe that we'll gain a lot of goodwill from taking that approach since we closed the drop boxes. The next thing I want really some direction from would help me on the board is the proposal that we have as we look at unemployment numbers to waive fines and fees for overdue material for the next 24 months. Starting February 1st of 2020, we raise or receive about $480,000 annually in fines and fees for overdue material. What we're saying is that due to the fact that unemployment and people being financially in a difficult situation, is it good for the community to do that, particularly when they're looking for entertainment and educational resources that they may have paid for before? And this is just purely to see if this is a palatable idea, because what we would need to do in June is come back and show you where we would take that $480,000 from. If the board is very much of the opinion like, no, we want to keep this in place, we think this is just an operational piece, then it would go no further. So I am seeking a little direction on this issue, because it ends up being a policy issue.
Sean,
sorry. Yep.
why did you choose 24 months?
It was completely arbitrary. We felt that was long enough that it would be able, people who are unemployed could find employment again. We were thinking about the V or the Nike swoosh, or however the economy is, that in my experience, 2 years kind of gets you back. It wasn't a permanent proposal to lay, to stop fines and fees and put sunset on it. The board could reevaluate it at that point. And so the debate was, should it be 1 year? Should it be 2 years? And should it be 3 years? 3 years felt too long. 1 year felt too short. So we kind of Goldilocks it. There was no science on it. We just kind of went with our gut.
It seems to me, yeah, 3 years would be permanent almost. Might as well. I'm not really necessarily in favor of it because people can always return their books on time. There's nothing that, except for right now. And I don't know how long right now exists, but certainly as we've got such a weird, whether we're in phase 1, phase 2, or maybe we just do it until we're in phase 3 or phase 4. from a state. I would rather do it something like that rather than saying 24. If we're going to do 24 months, we might as well just make it permanent and just say we're not going to do it, in my opinion.
Good point.
24 seems like a long time.
In COVID years, it seems like a very long time. These weeks have stretched forever. From an operational side, when it's pre-COVID, 24 months for me, and just wanting to get something done is in some ways a short period of time. So I understand both points of view.
2 years in county time is not all that long for the rest of us.
Right.
Could you remind us, what is the forgiveness policy now? We have one in place, don't we?
Yeah, so that's discretionary as far as on a case-by-case basis. If there are extenuating circumstances, the branch manager can actually make that call. Management can make that call. If it gets over a certain dollar amount, it'll generally come to my attention, and I'll look at that case. I mean, if it's that $1,200 to $1,500 range, then I'll generally, if it's in the couple of $100 range, it may be something that Tricia looks at with Jen or Adam, in conjunction with the manager if it's extenuating circumstances. If it's just like $1.50 and the person is adamant that they returned it and we can't find it, we just by policy believe the patron and just forgive it. We believe that the goodwill that we get from having that kind of believing patrons and realizing that the possibility is that we've lost it in process or something has happened to it, it's worth the small charge for the goodwill that we get. Realizing that our collection does turn over at a fairly high rate, and so nothing in our collection is really too much older than, on average, 5 years. So there's an element of loss with any public library and material.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, I would just say give the managers even more latitude and just say, look, if someone comes in and says, I am sorry, and I'm out of work, can you forgive my $5 or $10 or whatever it is? And just say, yeah, sure. Just
okay.
do it. I would rather just do it that way, but not make an official policy. Just instruct the staff to be a little bit more lenient right now.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Okay. I've got two. Does anyone else from the board want to weigh in, or is that is that the general feeling, just increase leniency and talk about that with the management?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we go too long, like 2 years or more, people might get in the habit of thinking that's the norm.
Okay.
I would be okay with abolishing fines, but we can be lenient too. So.
Okay.
As the mother of children who
I'm not opposed to abolishing it, but I think that's a much bigger discussion, and we've already had the start of it. We just haven't had the end of it.
Yeah, and with our, I'm sorry, Bethany, go ahead. Sorry, go.
I'm okay with being flexible, but I would really actually like to revisit whether or not we should just abolish them in general
And,
from a board point of view. But I think certainly books in a time of COVID, we can be as lenient as possible as people are getting stuff in, especially since we're responsible for messing up people bringing their books back. So I definitely think that shouldn't bite somebody.
Well, I'm a little bit, I think we certainly need to have a plan. However, if we're going to be setting policy regarding, 2 years worth, nearly $1 million in potential forgivable fines there, I think we should probably have a little further discussion on it. I think this is a matter where this needs to be moved, seconded. We have some serious discussion. Take a look at all aspects of it before we go forward.
I think so too.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're not opposed to this, but as an action item, go forward with the leniency in day-to-day operations, not do the 24 months, but continue to come back from maybe the discussion on fines and fees, and do some additional work and maybe follow up with an additional presentation that would lay out the advantages and disadvantages of fees, and then let you as a board discuss it, and then come to some determination, come to some vote. That's what I.
Yes.
Okay, great. This sounds good. Let's move on to the final pieces on this, which is you need adoption of the consent agenda. I guess and then I'll go into new business.
All right. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So then we're moving on to new business for the first informational item.
And I'm just scrolling through here. The first informational item is really talking about working with the payroll. It's a payroll clerk. So previously we had a payroll clerk, and what we're looking to do is form a memorandum of understanding with the Treasury and Financial Department to outsource the payroll element. There's a piece where we just had a single point of failure with this, and they have a whole staff. With the partnership that we have, I think we are complying much more readily with county policies and procedures concerning payroll. There were a number of areas where there may be gaps because we had a single person that had been doing this for a long period of time. And so we've got a level of consistency with this that aligns with the county. And do you have any questions about this?
I got a quick question, of course. So right now we're paying somebody, it looks like 0.85. I think that's like 34 hours. Does that sound about right? So we're transferring that over. We're going to pay them for 40 hour. And it looks like they can actually rededicate that person to do other work. Is that, and I guess that would be my point, is if we're actually going to spend more money, I agree with the flexibility. If we just, was that the only person in payroll that we had, Sean?
Yeah, it was the only person we had in payroll. And so they taking vacation or sick was a real problem. And they were the only one trained. And so Nikki and I previously, and now David and I, if we didn't have this, we would be, they end up being nail biter pay periods because we don't do this work day in and day out.
No, I'm all for that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the one thing, and I'm trying to find it, I believe that if the county wants to reassign that person for a small project, they can do so.
Yeah.
I think they're just maybe, and even added on the prior MOU that we talked about earlier, what's the recourse that, what if things aren't getting done because they're reassigning this person, I guess is the thing we should be aware of.
Yeah, and so any MOU that we form with the county is on a annual basis and is renewed each year by the library board. Again, it would follow the same type of rubric of those things being met. What we're seeing structurally and organizationally, those things are being met at a much higher level than they were when we had someone on staff. Just from capacity issues, they have, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 3 or 4 payroll clerks. And so if we have any outage within that department, they can flex. But even with the facilities, because there's an overhead that the staff has to do, meaning a facility staff still has to go to staff meetings that are facilities focused that aren't necessarily directly library related work. The same thing with the payroll clerk, which is they may have additional responsibilities within just being an outsourced that we're not, in a sense, going to get completely one-for-one billable hours. But what we are saying is that the majority of their time, and we know how much work payroll is will be taken up doing JCL payroll, and that's what we're paying them for. But we're also paying them for the indirect benefit of having that redundancy and cross-training, which we did not have. Ultimately, we may pay a little bit more money, but the net result for us is organizational stability.
Yeah, and Sean, Ashley Weir, she's the manager of those folks over there. And I think she's got a team of about 4 other clerks that work for her doing payroll services. And they work for other departments and agencies. And I think we would be their largest customer. And any change they might make would be in consultation with us. We've been working with Ashley since December of 2019 when we lost the payroll clerk. So, and she's done a wonderful job. And we're pretty confident. I think that we're getting pretty good service back from them. And you're right in that we're paying for a full-time FTE, but I think what we were paying our previous one, it ends up being about a wash from a overall dollars standpoint. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Good to know.
Are there any other questions concerning the payroll clerk? Okay, and the next one is just the information that just an update that we've been working with the Baptist Church, Lenexa Baptist Church, to basically to be good neighbors, to not have any liability, and they have their own insurance, and Fred has worked with them on the parking agreement. The mistake I had made was once I received it from Fred, I think probably 2 weeks ago, I thought I had forwarded it to them, but I hadn't. I forwarded it to them this morning, this is just purely information in case you have any questions about it, and I would be bringing it back to the board for your vote at the June board meeting. But again, it's just restricting and defining the usage of that shared parking agreement and establishing who has liability. Is there any questions concerning this parking agreement with the Lenexa Baptist Church? Okay. If there are no questions, that concludes the new business.
Okay. Well, you've been busy. The staff's been busy, and I think they're all doing a great job, and thank you for keeping us updated on everything, and you guys are doing an awesome job.
Thank you.
Anything else we need to talk about before we adjourn? Seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
Amy, I'm reading a cool book called Tales from the Way. It's available on Amazon, and I never tell you guys what I'm reading because it's never really exciting. It's usually work related, but this is pretty cool, so you guys should check it out.
And what was the name of it?
Tales from the Way.
Okay.